A conversation I had one day during a lunch break would completely change my financial future. Hey, this is Dustin, and in this video, I'm going to break down real estate investing and stock market investing and which one I think is better because I did both. So stick around, and by the end of the video, you'll have a clear understanding of both. But first, let me set the stage and give you the stories on how I got started in both. So let's go first with the stock market. When I was in high school and some of college, I worked for an oil field company that happened to be publicly traded. And one day during lunch, one of the bosses and leaders in the company told me, he said, "Hey, you should buy stock in this company. It'd probably be a great investment." And I think I was like 17 or 18 at the time. I said, "Awesome. That sounds great. How do I do that?" And we used to have these breaks, 15 minutes a day, 2 or 3 breaks while we were working. And so during these breaks, I would go into his office and he would show me on the computer how to invest in stocks, what the stock market was, what all this meant. And he one day showed me his stock portfolio and I couldn't believe it. It was a sum of money that I just couldn't fathom at the time. It was several hundreds of thousands of dollars. And on one of his positions or one of the stocks he owns, it was like a multiple six-figure position, which was crazy to me. So at the time, I'm, a helper at this machine shop in this oil field company, making like $10 an hour, not really any skills, no investments, anything like that. So that's kind of like the thought process as I was learning. And I was very intrigued. And so he would show me these things each day, and I became probably obsessed. So I went to Books a Million and bought a stack of books on the stock market, learned as much as I could, and then I opened a brokerage account and I bought stock in that company. And it turned out to be a fruitful investment. Got in a good time. The stock climbed. It ended up getting bought out, and then the stock continued to climb. And through all of that, not only did I make investments into the company that I was working with, but I had learned how to look at other stocks and analyze them and think through them. And I started investing in other things. And that also turned out to be fruitful. So much so that my parents gave me a little bit of money to invest for them. And I actually made enough for them to pay off a small SBA loan that they still had for their business, which is pretty awesome. And also, some of the lessons I learned through that. Well, actually, the first lesson I took from that was this idea of leverage, being able to invest money and make a return and it not be dependent on me, the hours I worked, or me physically investing time, whether with my mind or at that time with my back, working in this machine shop. And that was also really exciting to me, to have my money work for me or even work harder than I was working for the money at the time. And so I continued to invest in the stock market. And then several years later, I had this idea of wanting to invest in more things. And I always knew about real estate. I just didn't really have anybody in my circle that was a real estate investor or anybody I can talk through. But I saw it from a distance, online. I would hear about it. I discovered Bigger Pockets, which is a YouTube channel podcast that talks about real estate investing. So if you've been on your journey for any amount of time and you're watching this video, there's a high likelihood you've probably heard of Bigger Pockets. But the thing that stuck with me and really got me excited to start investing in real estate, my wife had these family get-togethers, and one of her uncles was a real estate investor and had a real estate brokerage, had his real estate license, and was very successful. And I just seemed to gravitate towards him at these family functions. And we would always talk about real estate, and I would ask him how he got started, and anything that he wanted to talk about, I was listening. In one of these conversations, he told me something that stuck with me, and I still think about it to this day, actually. He said, "Hey, if you can buy one rental property per year for 10 years, no one will be able to touch you." And what he meant by that was, if you can have these assets that you continue to buy, they cash flow, they appreciate in value, you'll basically build this asset, this snowball asset, where at a certain point in time, this thing will continue generating money whether you work or not, and you'll have these things that are growing in value to increase your net worth and ultimately build wealth for yourself. And I'll never forget, I left that conversation and my wife and I were talking. It's like, man, we have to start buying real estate. It's like, man, how can I take this 10-year time frame and do it in like a year, a few months or something like that? And that was the question I proposed to myself. And eventually got involved in real estate, had my first property in 2020, right before the pandemic and all the craziness happened. And through that, I learned a lot of things. I continued to expand my understanding of leverage, being able to put some money up, and then the bank financed 3/4 of that with a loan, which allowed me to buy more assets at the time. And then also, I learned things about cash flow and appreciation and building a team and having all of these things working together. And so I've done that over the last several years. In a 3.5 year time frame, I was able to buy over 100 rental properties and really understand what that part of the investment world looked like. And as I take a step back and look at this 30,000 foot view, I gained some perspective to myself, both with the real estate market and the stock market, and something that I would like to share here on what do I think is the best route to go. For most people, especially if you have a full-time career and you're looking to build wealth, I think that the real estate world is the way to go. So if we back up here, I read a stat the other day, 7 or 80% of people don't have enough money to retire, or they won't have enough money to retire. So if you have a 401k with work, there's probably a chance that you are investing in stocks and you have a company match and all of that, which is great. Continue to do that. But for most people, they are not contributing enough, or they don't have enough money to invest in the stock market to set them free or have financial freedom in any small amount of time that makes sense, where they can still enjoy things and have the fruits of that labor or that wealth. Because one thing with the real estate, or excuse me, the stock market, you have to have all of that money up front to invest in stocks and have this big return. With real estate, it's very different. You can have as little as 10%, 5%, 3.5% of whatever that purchase price is going to be, and then you can go buy an asset that'll create cash flow and appreciation and increase your net worth. And then really, to supercharge this, I have learned that you can buy property with no money out of your own pocket or any of your own money. And once I really understood that, that's what solidified to me that, hey, you should definitely start with rental property investing, especially if you can learn the financial pieces and how to finance it properly, because you can get so much leverage on your money and your time and really exponentially grow that in a 5 to 10 year time frame. So personally, I think if you're looking to generate wealth in 5 or 10 years, you probably want to go the real estate route. You can buy a lot more assets with the same amount of money that you would have to invest in the stock market and not get a huge return. And then you can go learn all of these other things, whether you want to raise money, whether you want to partner with other folks to help you grow faster, or diversify what asset classes you are working in. You have so many things at your disposal that you can go out and build. With the stock market, you have to have all of the capital up front, unless you go margin accounts and all of that, which is insanely risky because most people don't know what they're looking at with a stock, and there's so many things that control that. And with real estate, you have the leverage, you have more control. You can look at the single asset and decide, hey, do I want to buy this? There's not as much volatility as up and downs as you see with the stock market. And you can really go out and create a really nice business for yourself in a much shorter time frame than you could with the stock market, especially if you don't have loads and loads of money to invest in the stock market. So for whatever it's worth, that is my 2 cents on if the stock market's better or real estate investing. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Are you a stock market person, or are you looking to get in real estate and go full-fledged with that? So appreciate you watching the video. That's all I have for today. If you enjoy learning more about real estate investing, consider subscribing to the channel. Talk about these things each and every week. And with that, this video is a wrap. Bye for now.